Quick video on Joseph Parker's next opponent. I thought I'd better put this one up because I did a video 2 or 3 weeks back on Joseph Parker fighting Vinny Maddalone. It appeared that that was the fight to be made at the time. It's not going to be Vinny Maddalone, it's going to be this new chap. Let me just pull up his full name so I make sure I announce it correctly. Irineu Beato Costa Jr. Heavyweight from Brazil. Top rated heavyweight in Brazil. 6'3.5". Boxer have him 60 in the world as a heavyweight. Now let me start by saying I'm a Parker fan. I've covered him, a few videos on my channel. Opinion on him: big talent, but that he needs more fights. Some weaknesses, specifically defensively. I don't think he fights to his strengths. He's a big man, talented boxer. I think he needs to box more. He needs to cover up more. Didn't like the way he was a bit hittable at Williams, against Williams. I think my overall analysis of Parker in brief is big talent, but we must remember how young he is. And it is no bad thing for a youngster of his age to have 3 or 4 fights at the Sermon Williams level. Kevin Johnson, those kind of guys. I said I didn't want him rushed too soon. Now, I wanted to do a little bit of an analysis on his opponent, just because I saw a press release today from Parker's people. And as I say, I don't want to be critical because I know they needed to find an opponent at very, very short notice. But they're talking about this opponent like it's the second coming of Muhammad Ali. Massive puncher, massive guy. We were going to make the Vinny Maddalone fans, but the fans demanded a younger, more capable opponent. So we brought in Irineu Costa. Now, I had the misfortune of watching Christian Hamer fight this guy very, very recently. Actually, it was the 31st of October, so 19 days ago. And I presume that is why they've been able to get him in short notice, because he's had a fight recently. He's got himself into what he considers to be fighting shape. As recently as, where are we now, 18th of the month. So as recently as 18 days ago. So he probably, can take a fight again. He doesn't need to have a training camp, and as such, he can, go and fight Parker, because I understand Parker's fighting in early December. But let me tell you something about that Christian Hamer fight. Christian Hamer is not someone who I rate. I think he's imminently beatable and hugely overrated by his BoxRec ranking. But Hamer pretty much won every round. In fact, all 3 of the judges scored it 120 to 108 to 108 and to 107. So, Christian Hamer won the fight very, very convincingly. And the unfortunate thing about this guy is he is the personification of a padded record. He turned up 15-0, 13 knockouts, all of them sort of South American knockouts, and you never know what to expect. Is this guy going to be any good, or is he just a padded record who turns up, and gets exposed by the step up of European competition? Now, not only did he get exposed by Christian Hamer, but it was clear that he hadn't come to fight, he had come to survive. He was very much there for the paycheck, very much there for the sake of being an opponent, and he didn't pose any threat at all to Christian Hamer, who, in my perspective, is an imminently beatable guy. Let's not forget, he's been beaten 3 times, he's been KO'd by Marius Wok, so, he is an imminently beaten guy. He was also a smaller man than Irineu Beato Costa, so you're thinking this guy would come to give it a go. He's unbeaten, his knockout record is very, very high. He's in against a smaller man, he's in against a man who's been beaten 3 times, he's in against a man who's been stopped, but he didn't come to fight at all. He was clearly one of these guys who padded his record out domestically, come over to Europe for the payday, and hadn't really come to fight at that point. He wasn't there to win. And I think it's slightly unfortunate because, as I say, the way Parker's people are branding this guy, and it's not a criticism because I know you have to talk about the opponents, and I know they were on very short notice to find an opponent, but the way they're talking about this guy makes him sound like he's got scope of beating Parker. And to be realistic, the bigger question is not does he have scope of beating Parker, does he have scope of winning a single round? Because based on his performance against Christian Hamer, he won't win a single round. He just doesn't have even the threat of a Sermon Williams or a Kevin Johnson or even a Vinnie Madelone. I'd take all three of those guys over this chap because he just hasn't fought anyone decent and doesn't have the sort of punching output and the skill at sort of this level at all, despite what his record would suggest. So I think it's an overhyped fight by the promoters of Joseph Parker. I also think that it's not, unfortunately, it's one of these fights where Parker may not learn as much as he would against a Vinnie Madelone. Because I think Parker, the two biggest areas I'd like to see him improve are using his sort of God-given attributes, his size, his range, and his boxing ability, and his defensive capability. And someone like Vinnie Madelone would be a smaller man. Parker would be best served using a jab, using movement, using boxing pedigree to get the win. Additionally, Madalone's the kind of guy who throws wild punches in the same way against Sermon Williams. And it would be very, very interesting to see whether Parker had learnt from the Williams fight and was more sort of defensively capable and took less clean shots than he did against Williams. So I think those are the kind of fights I'd like to see Parker in before stepping up against decent competition. Now I know this guy's rated 15th in the WBO, but quite frankly that's ridiculous. Christian Hamer shouldn't be rated 15th in any organisation, and he, won every round against this guy last time out. So this guy doesn't, have capability to beat Parker, in my opinion. But what I'd like to see him do was just, fight someone of the same mould, Sermon Williams, again. Because whilst he did well in that fight, there was room for improvement. And I think at 22, I'd like to see him have another chance to improve again. As I say, I'm not being critical. I am a fan of the guy. I know they had short notice to find an opponent, and I give them huge credit for keeping Parker busy. Huge credit. I think that's so important for a young heavyweight, and like Anthony Joshua, like Hughie Fury, if they can get him a few fights back to back, that's only going to help with his development. This opponent, I think people need to know the truth about him. Don't read the hype, don't read the knockout record. If you've got any sort of doubts about the guy at all, I would advise you not to, but I would suggest that maybe you could consider sitting down for a few rounds of the Christian Hamer fight, because that will show you where this guy is at. Interested to hear any more thoughts on this. What do people think of him as a make-up for Joseph Parker? Follow me on Twitter @BoxingGossip.